So I've been thinking a lot lately about why we tell stories. Like, some stories exist to entertain other people, or to instruct them, or to commiserate with them. We tend to think of stories as being part of media, but they're not limited to books, movies, games, news, etc. Just pay attention the next time you hang out with a friend. You're going to go back and forth telling stories about things that happened to you, or a friend of yours, or a celebrity you're both invested in, summarizing things that you've read or seen or heard about. And each one of these stories serves a communicative purpose. And usually the delivery is pretty seamless. Like, if you're a reasonably sociable person, then you've been practicing telling these stories for years. It's second nature to you at this point. You are trying to get a point across. You think of a little story that will help you get your point across. You introduce the characters and their status quo quickly and efficiently. You summarize the thing that happened to them, and you end your story with a quick little punchline. And most of the time, this process is completely automatic, so it'll grab your attention when things go wrong. This video is an analysis of a time that somebody told me a story that didn't quite work. You know, it was either make a video about Dahmer or make a video about this. You can see how invested I am in growing my channel. It was August of 2019, and I was in job orientation for my first job out of grad school. As we arrived at the topic of teamwork, the presenter told a little story. There once was an overbearing boss. He'd been in the department for a long time, and he liked things done a certain way. He had a tendency to micromanage, and he was happy to correct people when their work needed correcting. The team didn't like this very much. One day, the boss went to the doctor, and the doctor told him that he was going to need a new medication. The next day, after starting the medication, he was a little bit sleepy, and he didn't have the energy to go around checking people's work and telling them how they could do their work better. He sat at his desk, and he was quiet, and his employees were happy. The second day, he had even less energy. He sat at his desk, and he dozed on and off all day, and his employees were happy. The third day, he had even less energy. He got to work, he sat down at his desk, he fell asleep, and he died. At this point, the presenter asked the room, "Now, what's the moral of this story?" Now, I want you to think about what your answer would be. Write it in the comments so we have a record. Pause the video if you need to. Because the answer that I came up with was not the correct answer. Now, the answer that I came up with, and the answer that my best friend came up with when I asked them, was, don't be an asshole. Right? Because if people like you and you look like you're doing poorly, they'll check in on you. Whereas if you're annoying or bothersome or so aggressive that just the sight of you makes your colleagues' blood boil, nobody cares. Oh, you're quiet and staying to yourself today? Good riddance. Don't be that person. Now, you already know that that's not the answer that the presenter came up with, so what did she say? She said that the moral of the story was to check in on each other, because teamwork might save a life. And at the risk of sounding like I've held on to this, I think that my interpretation is better, both from a narrative perspective and an instructional one. Let's take a look at why. When you tell this kind of instructive story, you tend to have a main character. They start the story with a set of flaws. Bad things happen to them because of the flaws. They learn their lessons, and then they end the story changed. Call it the hero's journey, or the 3-act structure, or whatever you want to call it, but most stories revolve around these character beats. By following one character, you grow to identify with them and learn their lessons for yourself. This story that the presenter told has a lot in common with the classic morality tale, so let's look at a couple of those. In one story, the little brown bear has a set of new clothes, and he's careless with them. When he takes them off, the wind decides to punish him for his carelessness, and he blows them away. And the little brown bear has to put on his old clothes as he runs around town trying to find his fancy new clothes. This punishment is directly related to the flaw, and it facilitates character growth. And along with the little brown bear, the reader of this story also learns that if you want to have nice things, then you have to take care of them. And while this story structure is common in children's literature, it's not exclusive to children's media either. In Les Mis, Fantine falls in love with a flaky guy and makes the mistake of sleeping with him before marriage. The consequence of this mistake is that she has a child out of wedlock and she struggles to earn a living. Ultimately, she became a whore, contracted venereal disease, and died. Now, what's the moral of this story? If Les Mis had been written by the orientation leader, the moral of this story might be, if you're a guy, don't sleep with unmarried women because you'll hurt their futures. Obviously, that's not who this story is trying to warn. I say obviously because he's not the character that we follow. He doesn't pay any price, probably doesn't even know he had a kid, and he doesn't learn anything. He's not even in this story. It's not about him. The story is instruction for young girls. Don't let your guard slip, and don't be like Fantine. I Dreamed a Dream is a song all about her mistakes and the things that she would have done differently. It's too late for Fantine, but it doesn't have to be too late for you. That's the reason why this story works better in a narrative sense and an instructive sense if the moral of the story is the one that I came up with. That way we follow one character, the manager, who has flaws and is punished for those flaws and learns something from being punished for those flaws and has to change in a way to overcome. Or I guess he's dead at the end of the story, but we, the audience, learn, don't be like that. Don't be an asshole. Now, that's clearly not the takeaway that the presenter was going for. Let's take a look at the takeaway that the presenter wanted to leave us with. Look out for each other, even if someone on your team is a grumpy person. This lesson isn't one that has to be learned by the manager. This lesson is one that has to be learned from the employee. So that reframes the story around the employee character, not the manager character. In that case, maybe the story would resemble Aggretsuko Season 4, an anime about life and work, and look something like this. There was once a worker who had an overbearing boss. The boss had been at the company for 30 years, and he was set in his ways. One day, the employee decided she'd had enough, so she went to the CEO and complained, and the CEO listened.
No! Are you out of your mind?
Don't let him fool you!
He's the devil in a pig suit!
He turned off the AC on us! I thought I was gonna die!
It sounds like he's quite a source of stress for you.
That's an understatement. I've got it bad enough, but he's been bullying Retsuko on and off for years now.
Has he? Excuse me, would you be so kind as to bring them another?
Nope, I'm good. That's super kind of you, but...
Sorry for the delay.
Twist my arm!
Now, please tell me what Tone has put you through.
He had the old manager transferred, and a series of new managers took his place. The first new manager gave his team a hard time about things like needing to pick up a sick kid from daycare.
I get it. Your youngest boy came down with a fever.
Uh-huh. That or the flu.
I'm so sorry to hear that. Hope he's better soon.
Oh, thanks so much for the kind words. Well then, I guess I'll see you tomorrow.
Tomorrow? But what about Bullfrog Industries accounts receivable?
Huh?
Wait, you forgot?
I didn't, but I need to take my boy to the doctor now.
You're leaving work.
As tough as the previous manager had been, he hadn't done that.
Tone didn't give Kabai grief about having to do stuff for her family, right?
The second new manager had a strange habit of working late. One day, the employee noticed that the new manager had changed some of her work. Concerned about what she was seeing, she visited the old manager in his new department and asked him to help her make sense of what she was seeing.
Haida was rewriting the account book I was in charge of. Is that a regular thing for the manager to do?
No.
Thought so.
Together, they were able to prove that the new manager was cooking the books.
I had Tone bring you here because we need to talk. We know about the window dressing. It's not too late to turn back, Haida. Himuro made you do it, didn't he?
And with a good word from the employee, the old manager got his job back.
Teamwork makes the dream work!
Now that the employee character is the protagonist of the story, the moral of the story can be something like, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't, or don't take people for granted, or try and see the best in people. That is to say that the story that the orientation leader wanted to tell can be told, but you have to center the right characters in order to do that. I said at the beginning of this video that the majority of the time we tell little stories like this, it's natural and conversational. We intuitively decide what the point of any given story is, and we adjust our narrative formatting accordingly. What can make this a little trickier is when you try to add a story to a presentation, either to add clarity or to keep it engaging. Unlike a conversational story, this kind of story doesn't just naturally come to you, it's planned in advance. What this means is that you don't have your conversational intuitions working for you, helping you adjust your stories according to the point you want to convey. So when you're planning a presentation like this and decide to add stories, you have to make sure that the characters, their flaws, and the lessons that they learn all align with each other and with the takeaway that you want your audience to get from your story. Thank you all for watching to the end. If you thought this video was instructive, give it a like, and if you enjoy my content, don't forget to subscribe for more.